Hello everyone, welcome to chapter 2 of my tour preparation blog. Today I'm on a day off in downtown Pittsburgh. This chapter will be about mainly charting songs and learning songs and the process I go through of memorization, and what I do when I have a lot of songs to learn at one time. In my touring life, I've had as much as 8 days of rehearsal for this particular tour. I had the luxury of having about 8 days to rehearse. I've had as few as four for up to maybe 40 tunes. And one particular occasion, I joined a tour with no rehearsal where I was learning songs on a plane. So having a charting process that can be a shorthand is really great. But what I'm mainly going to cover in this video is the process I use of receiving music, making my own charts, and going through the process of reducing these charts and committing them to memory in the few steps I go through to get to that point. So I'm going to start diving into this tune called A la Luz del Sol. Printed out chart right here that was sent to me. What I'm going to do, this tune is a little tricky on first listen. There are some loops in the recording, and there are some 5/4 bars in the verses. Seemingly random, but they're probably not. There's some 3/4 bars. I'm gonna start to learn this tune off this master chart that's been sent to me, so I can learn about the phrasing. I'm gonna write out the groove, and then what I'll probably do is I'll make my own chart on kind of go back to my regular old chart making on just a yellow pad here. And this is the kind of process that helps me ingrain the tune in my head and ingrain the groove in my head. And then what I'll do is I'll go to the kit, and because there's kind of loop elements, I'm going to try to set up a kind of side alternate kit to try to grab some of these elements. They do, in this gig, they do run a loop, but I've also been told that to go ahead and experiment and see what I come up with. I'm also going to cross-reference the recorded version with a couple different live YouTube versions. An older one that's recorded for a DVD and a more recent one that a fan recorded on here, but it's two different drummers, so I'm going to see what they were both doing. First thing I'll do is go from the actual written, or the actual recorded track. Okay, so now I've referenced this tune. I've probably listened to it 6 times. I listened to the original recorded version, which I believe was made maybe 2004, something like that. So it was a bit elusive with the programming and the odd times. I made some notes on the chart listening to that, and then went and I found a live YouTube version from probably 2007, 2006, something like that. And that was super helpful. I got some ideas on parts, phrasing of the odd times, which and after listening to it twice, the vocal phrasing along with the odd times started to make sense. The 5/4 bars in the verses, and then the chorus is mainly in 3/4, but it also switches back to 4/4 a couple bars, and then there's a 2/4 bar. And when you hear the vocal phrasing, it all starts to make sense. I then checked out a third live YouTube version with a different drummer, and at that point I started to realize that this tune has really developed over a few years of being played live with different people. So I went back to the previous YouTube version, the first YouTube version, and then I started to make my own chart, which is here. So this, which was once 5 pages of this chart, I now have down to 2 pages here, and it's much more simplified. So now, at that point, I'd listened to it probably 5 or 6 times. I started to chart some very specific kick drum and bass patterns in the intro, references to the kick drum patterns in the verses and in the choruses. And by the time I got to the last chorus here, I started just making a lot of slashes and things here. It was really starting to make sense to me. After I finished that, I then went back to the second YouTube version with the other drummer, and I listened down to make sure those kick patterns had not changed. I did notice right at the very end that this particular rhythm section had added a couple hits near the kind of climax of the tune. So I'm definitely going to assume that those are still in because it's a newer version of the live version. So at this point, I kind of have an idea of setup that I want to use for this tune in particular. Some modern references of how the tune was played as opposed to how it was recorded over 10 years ago, and how I may want to play it. So at this point, I'm gonna, just go sit with my headphones on my laptop and just start playing through the song. Here's another example of taking a chart and kind of paring it down for me to just the phrasing. So here's this tune, Le Temple des Cathédrales. You can see it's pretty straight ahead. The drums come in here. Here's this 5/4 bar, 4/4 4/4 4/4, another 5/4. And so at this point, I've actually played through this tune a handful of times. And what I've decided to do to try to internalize it is I've reduced it to this. Intro, organ, verse, 8 bars with a 5/4 bar. I know that I'm out there already just by listening and playing through. Chorus, I'm still out. Verse, I'm still out. And at this point, I'll probably add another notation here. This is where I come in. And this is just the phrasing. 3 bars of 4/4 and then a 5/4 bar. 3 bars of 4/4, and I hit a whole note, and then there's a 5/4 bar with a crescendo into the next chorus. So you get the idea of the kind of reduction process just in my brain of trying to learn these tunes and internalize them. Here's one interesting thing I've found in the research of these songs. I was learning this tune called Higher Window. To me, it just sounded like there probably was drums in that recorded at some point, and maybe they were just taken out as an aesthetic choice. So I had this kind of weird feeling. So I went and researched on YouTube, and lo and behold, there's drums. So good idea for doing homework and checking not just the studio recording, but live versions also. Okay, so one thing I'm working on while working on the tunes today, and this is a couple days before the first rehearsal, is I feel pretty good about playing most of the tunes. I know what's supposed to happen. There's still things I'm having trouble with in tunes here and there. I'm not on my chart anymore. I know the song enough in my head. There are a few things that hang me up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make kind of a master list here. It's not musical. It's not musical notes at all. By doing this is kind of yet another thing of a reduction of getting me off. I went from the first big printed chart to my own chart that helped me, size down the tune. And now I'm just going to simple, literally text notes that I can have next to me before I play through each tune. So hopefully tomorrow, when I go over these again, I can just glance at these and I'll know exactly what's supposed to happen. I'll know the tune well enough. I'll know the little problem point in the song, then, if I'm having an issue with it. So I'll do this for every tune today. I'm going to make a list of anything that I should be reminded of in the song, so I don't have any of these hang-ups when I get into rehearsal. Another important part of charting songs as the drummer is writing down tempos. Sometimes, nowadays we can put all these in an app, so we have them ready. But I've been known to make an Excel sheet of tempos, to have a reference of the recorded version tempo, and also possibly a live version tempo if they're different. That way I could reference either in a rehearsal. If somebody says, it feels fast, it feels slow, you can tell them, well, the recorded version was at this tempo, but a couple of the live versions I was checked out were at these two tempos. And if the band is not on a click, then this can be an important reference.